Hey guys, let me show you how to log into eBay. So let's say you're here. The first thing you want to do is find the login URL, and then I'll show you how to build the page class that you would use. So let's go ahead and bring this over. So this is our structure. So you would want to create a class that represents this page. So let's bring this. So we have our pages. And what I'll do here is I will just take this class, this variable page, because we're going to create a new page. So you could just right click, add, do a new item. But I'm going to create a copy because I want to just change it to be what I need it to be. So we'll say eBay sign in page. So we have to update our name here. So let's do that. So let's change this guy, that one. Okay, so let's look at the elements that we need. So we're going to need the username element, and we're going to also need the sign in button. So let's zoom out. We can get a full look at our class. So let's move this over. Okay, so let's open up our DevTools. And let's take a look at the elements in here. So if we had our username and password, we can just use user ID for the input. We don't want to use the div, although sometimes you can, but you want to get into the habit of using the input. So the tag in this case is input. And for the button, the tag for button is button. So this right here is the tag, this is the class, and then these are the actual classes. Okay, so let's go back to adding our elements. So first, when we get to this screen, we need to wait for the elements that we are looking for, and then we need to interact with them. So first, let's go ahead and create, so we'll call this one, this is a buy object. And this is going to hold our buy selector. Well, the selector is of XPath, but its type is buy. So we'll call this one username. We'll just say buy to indicate the type. And I'll change this to ID. So in our web element is going to use our buy selector, or our buy. Now you could do find element by ID. You could put by ID in here, but I'm doing it this way. It's just a technique. So let's go ahead and let's zoom in a bit. So we're going to need two. Let's do this. Just copy this guy, and we'll say this is going to be our sign in button by. Name of element will be button element, and this will be username element. And the reason why we're doing it this way is because there are different methods available. So for an object of type by, you can wait for that object. But an object of type by, you can't click it directly. So we want to use the iWeb element because we can click it, we can perform actions, the advanced actions API class on it. So that's why I'm separating it into object pairs. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our, so we have user ID, and that will be our ID here. And then we're going to need the ID for the button, which, oh nice, there is an ID. So sometimes there's not an ID, sometimes there's just name, or you have to get creative and create a custom XPath. So there's a lot of techniques to do that with. So let's go here and we'll do sign in continue button. Okay. Now let's give this a meaningful name. We're going to say enter username, and we will put we're going to wait until we find our by ID, so of type by, and then we're going to send keys to the element because we want to log in. So let's parameterize this method so we can pass in some arguments. So we'll say of type string, and it'll be username. And so here we'll change this to be username element. So we'll do .send keys username. So since it's an of type element, an available method we have on that class is send keys. So we're going to pass in the parameter or the argument username into this username element send keys. Okay? So next we want to do is we want to, now we can put this in the same method, but just for the sake of example, click sign in button. And we will say wait for the sign in button by. That's exactly what we want. And then we also want the sign in button element, and we want to click it. Okay, so that is all we need to do for this page. And I'm deliberately leaving out the password, but we'll see why in a second. So let's go to our solution and let's create a test for it. So the test is going to be in this format. We're going to have our annotations. So setup, test, tear down. Setup methods run first, test runs second, and then the tear down runs after the test. So we're going to, this is just an example test that we're going to use as a template. So we'll copy this test. Let me zoom in a bit. Copy this test. Or you could just right click, add new item, and create a class. But just trying to do this reasonably quickly. And we're going to name this eBay sign, I called it sign page. Okay, eBay sign in test. Okay, and so we just need to change the class to match the name of the file. Now I do want to change that. I'll call this sign in page. Yes. Okay, so it refactored for me automatically. That's excellent. So now let's go back to our Solution Explorer. Let's go back to our test. And what we want to do here is, okay, so we don't need this variable page, but this is how we pull in the methods from the previous page. So now if you don't add the access modifier, it does default to private, but I'll just add it anyway. And we want our eBay sign-in page, and we'll call it eBay. We'll just call it eBay. Okay, so now we'll create a new instance of the class. We'll call it eBay. We'll say new, or not, we're referencing this object here of class, of type class, and it's this sign-in page. So it's going to be a new eBay sign-in page, and we're going to pass in the WebDriver. Okay, so now we can go to the eBay. Once we navigate to the eBay page, we're going to need to interact with it. So we'll need our methods that we just created in an earlier class. So, and remember, they were enter username and then clicking the sign in button. So let's go back. So we can just use the tabs up here. Give this a meaningful name. Sign into eBay test. Okay, so we're going to say eBay. Now this dot will show us our available methods, and we want to enter the username. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to click the sign in button. Okay, now we actually have to pass in a username, so we will say equal to don't spam eBay. Testing fake123.com. That's what we'll do. And then we'll pass that in to our method. We'll pass this username into here. We could call it something else. We could call it UN for short. Doesn't matter as long as it's consistent. But here, let's just go back. All right. So the next thing we need is we need the URL to use this driver.navigate go to URL. So this is what's actually going to take us to the eBay sign-in page. So let's go back to eBay and let's grab this URL right here. And I'm, again, just getting that from going to the home, going to sign in, and then just grabbing this. So now let's come back and we will get rid of this URL here. Okay, this is our full test. So now let me add a thread.sleep just so we can see what's going on. We'll say 5 seconds. And then I will put one more just to give me a second to drag the window over once it initializes. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. Okay, that should open up here in a moment. Okay, it did. Excellent. So I made a mistake by putting the sleep after the assert pass. That basically makes the sleep unreachable. So let's do this. Try that one more time. Drag that over. There we go. So the login worked. eBay has additional checks, but that's why we didn't even bother with the password. But that is how you would automate logging into eBay. See you guys in the next one.